Here we are again then, part 4. Now, if you've watched the previous parts of this series, all I can say is thank you very much. It's been quite long-winded, hasn't it, this project? And like I say, if you have watched the previous videos, you're amazing. And I hope that you've picked up some tips, learned something, or just enjoyed the process that I've gone through in making a piece like this. Today we are going to ebonize the two bands, and if they dry in time, I'm gonna oil them. Now the rest of the piece looks like the oil has gone on really well, and it doesn't look like I need to do a second coat. But I won't really tempt fate by saying I don't need a second coat until I've got the oil on these. If that goes on all right, then it might be that I leave it then just for that, the oil on those two sections to dry before I flip it over and sort the back out. Now, once we get that to that stage where I've ebonized the two bands and they're oiled and it's dry, we got to then think about orientation, and a bit later on I'll change the angle of the camera so that you're more overhead, and I'll go through the process of how I choose the orientation. This piece is a little bit difficult in that where I want to hang it, I can't, because there's dirty great big holes. So it's going to be a little bit different the way I normally do it. But I will use the same method, and I will use these huge mirror hangers. Now, yes, they are overkill, but it's better to be over the top than it not be strong enough, and then, you know, it's hung up at a customer's house, and God forbid it came down, would ruin the piece and probably upset the customer, wouldn't it? So it's better to be overkill. So these are really sturdy mirror hangers. As I say, the weight of this piece doesn't justify the two of them, but that's what I'm going to use, and they will be screwed into the back. If you remember, we stepped the back, so the center of it is quite thick, or a lot thicker than what it is out here at the edge. Now, that means I can screw into the back with the right length of screw and not worry about coming right the way through the piece. If this wood wasn't as dry as I know it is, then we'd have a bit of an issue in whereas the thinner edge would dry quicker than the inside because of the different thickness. But because I've known this piece of wood for multiple years, I know it's dry and it's not going to cause an issue. We can go ahead and we've turned it, we've done everything we need to do, but that's because I've known this piece for a long time. Had I only just acquired the piece of wood, not really knowing exactly when it was felled or how long it had been in dry store for, then I'd have been dubious even starting this process, just because I'd be worried that once it was turned, because it wasn't that quite dry, it would move. So, but as I say, I've known this piece for a number of years. It's been in my workshop for a good 2 or 3 years for starters, so I know it's not going to go anywhere. Touch wood. You can't help what the sun does, and you can't help if the customer puts it over a radiator or a heater, God forbid an open fire. So I'm quite confident it's not going anywhere and won't do, but there are things that are outside of your control, so let's hope the customer is a sensible one. Anyway, so that's the plan. Look, ebonize these two and get these oiled today. I suspect it'll take probably 5 coats to get the ebonizing solution to really take. It will go on black. It won't go any blacker. It might do. It might go blacker as a reaction, but I shall probably just put 5 coats on and just go from there. because of all the intricacy of certain areas where there's the verdigris mixed in with the area that I'm gonna ebonize, I will be painting slowly with a fine brush and literally painting around those areas of verdigris. I don't want to get the ebonizing solution onto that verdigris area. So let's stop waffling and put the time lapse on and just crack on with it, eh? So the first coat of ebonizing solution is on both of those bands there. Now, as I said to you before, I'm probably going to end up doing 5 coats of that to get that right. I don't really want to record and get you to sit and watch me do that 5 times. You've watched me the first time, I'm going to do the rest off camera. What I will say is, my first coat, I don't ever worry about cutting in, so doing the edge. I get close, but I don't make it perfect, not on the first pass. My prime objective on that first pass is to get the ebonizing solution on all of the surfaces, so the main flat surface and all of the concave that I've carved into it. Now, when you're doing that, you've got to keep the brush moving, and you don't want too much pressure on the brush because you want the brush to work. In that concave, you don't want it to fill up with a solution so that you lose the concave. You want to paint the surface or ebonize the surface and then take a lot of the excess out so that you don't fill up that concave. That's really important, especially as we're going to do 5 coats. So over 5 coats, if you keep leaving loads in there, it's going to fill up and you lose your decoration. So keep that brush moving, that's quite important. The next time I go round, once this is dry, the first coat's dry, I shall pay more attention to cutting in. And I shall probably, this next time round, cut in everything. And then maybe the 3rd and 4th time, I will just go over it near the edge. And then on the last go round, the 5th go, cut in properly again. So that the main bulk of it has got 5 coats, but the edge really, you're going to have some on your brush and you're just going to keep filling your brush every time it goes down. You need a steady hand. Did I mention, by the way, that this is a long-winded project and you do need lots of patience? Maybe once or twice. Right, so now I've got to wait for that to dry. It'll probably take, I don't know, maybe half an hour, not long. Again, it's a warm workshop, so it won't take long. Once it's dry, I can apply the 2nd coat and just keep going until I'm satisfied or until I get to that 5 coats. So there you go. Next time I come back on, I'll probably go straight to time lapse and show you me finishing off the last of the 5th coat, maybe. Or maybe I should just sit in a chair and say, I've done it. Let's wait and see. Okay, so we've got 5 coats on ebonizing, and we need to talk about ebonizing. If you were going to ebonize a finial or a goblet, before you make the item, you're going to be selective on the timber that you're going to use. For a finial, I'd choose something like sycamore, anything with a tight grain, so that when I turned it and then ebonized it, you're looking at a black object without interference of wide grain cutting in through it, or a knot or face grain or anything like that. So it would look as it's supposed to look, nice and shiny, clean, beautiful. You can't do that when you're ebonizing over such an area like this. Now, even though the bands are quite narrow, we are going over a big area. Now, across that area, you're going to encounter face grain, wide grain, tight grain, end grain. you're going to encounter some of the rot, and with this piece you're going to encounter some of the brass and the verdigris as well. So there's lots of different areas that are going to react differently to that ebonising solution. The tighter grain, the ebonising solution is going to sit more on top before it can soak in a lot slower. The wider grain areas are going to react differently. The rot is going to be dragged straight in. So even though I've saturated the area with 5 coats, all of those different areas are going to react differently and take in different amounts of that ebonising solution. What you're going to end up with is something that is imperfect. Now, on a finial, that would look really terrible. But on something like this, I'm trying to tell a story. I'm trying to rewrite the story of this tree. The story of this tree is a big old ash tree that's got rot in it for whatever reason and has had to be felled. The things it could tell us though over those years, hey? The story I'm trying to tell is that it's a battle shield and it's survived a battle hundreds of years ago, and it's some sort of antiquity or just dug up artifact, but it was used in battle. So the fact that that ebonising band or bands isn't perfect, that helps me tell that story because it's aged, it's got faded parts, it's got scuffed parts. If you haven't quite got the cutting in quite right, as long as there's not a big wild brush stroke, if you haven't got it quite right, that can be put down to age. So it's helping me enforce the story that I'm trying to tell with this piece of, effectively, it's art, isn't it? So don't worry too much when you're putting this ebonising solution on in such a big area that it's not all exactly the same. It's not all shiny and brilliant and black. Some of it might be dull and grey. Some of it might be a mixture of in between. So, and of course, if you've got your layering right, you'll still have a lot of your detail. But if one or two of them, if you've left a bit of ebonising solution in there and it's filled the hole slightly, that really, although you don't want it all over the piece, the odd few holes here and there, really, it's not going to matter. It's telling the story. You know, it's something of age. That's what I'm trying to create. Something that looks like it could have been in a battle 400 years ago or longer, and somebody has dug it up and found it. That's the look I'm after. So I don't want the pristine, crisp, clean lines that the ebonising you would normally do with ebonising. I'm after something else. Now, as I said, we've got 5 coats on this. What I'm going to now do is probably just oil the 2 bands. Okay, so it's been a couple of days since the last part of the video was filmed, and I've come back, and off camera I've put the oil on those 2 bands. I've also flipped that over, sanded the whole of the back of it and oiled that. So what I'm going to do now is just discuss with you the orientation of the piece. Now, ordinarily, if I'm doing a piece that's got a big hole in it, like this one has on the rim, or a feature of some sort, a big knot or whatever, I like to have that and position it at about 2 o'clock. So when it's hanging and you're looking at it, that feature or characteristic part is at the 2 o'clock section. I can't explain why I do that. It's just how I prefer to do it. Lots of people have different ways of hanging their pieces. I normally go by that 2 o'clock roll. Now, as you can see, if I lift this up a little bit, as you can see, it's in that about 2 o'clock position. So here's the start of that big hole that we've got. And this is how I would normally like to hang it, but we've got a problem. This area here is where I'd like to put the hanging brackets, and of course I can't because of that big hole. So I've got to play around a bit. I could turn it so that it was this way round, and as you can see it would be totally opposite, and I could put the hanging brackets up here, but I'm not keen on that. I'm not keen on that, but this is my preference. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make it so that that hole that I normally like at about 2 o'clock, I'm going to make it so that it's at about 5 o'clock, about there. And as you can see, I've got it in a sort of position that I think is about right. And there's good wood here. So at the top here at the back, there'll be good wood for me to put the brackets on. So that is where I think I'm going to hang it. Okay, now the brackets, we spoke earlier about the brackets. I think it was in a previous video actually. And do you remember I showed you those great big mirror brackets? I said at the time that they would be a bit of an overkill, and because it's really not that heavy, this piece, for those brackets. And I've happened to find some smaller ones here in the workshop, so I'm actually going to use these. There's still a 3-screw hanging bracket, and I'm still going to use 2 of them, and they're going to be attached on the back in that sort of position, side by side, so that it hangs equally. It's a simple case of 3 screws with a cordless screwdriver, so I'm not going to waste your time by showing you how to do that. So that's about it for this series. Thank you very much for watching. If you've watched all 4 of these videos, you'll see it's been a challenging one, this one. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you have too. And if you have, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Maybe even share one of the videos or all of the videos with one of your mates and have a chat about it. If you want to make a comment, any suggestions, or maybe even tell me what you would have done. Different hanging position, or would you have even tried something this size? Talk to me. Have a go at the comments below, and let's have a chat. For now though, take care of yourselves out there, and I'll see you on the next one. Before I go, I just thought I'd mention, today is the 5th of November. RHS Wisley, which is the next show I'm going to, is actually starting on the 8th of November. We're in the year 2023 at the moment. And this piece is going to be my centerpiece. If you would like to see it hanging in its full glory at the show, when I'm there and I'm all set up, I will be doing a short scan round video for Facebook. So if you don't already follow me on Facebook, Darren Wheeler RPT, Woodturner and Sculptor, go across and you'll actually get to see a video of this piece hanging at RHS Wisley in a few days' time. I am going now, so do take care of yourself.